Nothing Great About Britain is the debut, an incredible debut album from Slowthai, an album that would go on to be nominated for a Mercury Award this year, an album that was from an artist that I discovered this year through doing these videos, recommended initially by this audience. So thank you so much to everyone that kind of helped and joined in with this. Because without you guys, I would not have been listening to this album. If you've been following us for the last few days, I've been going over my albums of the year. I think there's like 10 in total, or maybe 9, I'm not too sure. But Nothing Great About Britain is absolutely one of my favourite albums of the year. An album which is quite a breath of fresh air in the music industry, especially for UK music. I wouldn't put this in the category of grime, although it is some form of UK rap. It certainly isn't very American at all, even though he started to work with some American artists. It's very punk in its approach. Perhaps you would say it's punk inspired by grime. I don't know. I don't think you need to categorize it. Regardless, it's an absolutely great album, and let's go through track for track and just talk about what we like and what we don't like. First track, Nothing Great About Britain, starts off with this kind of what sounds like a lot of lads getting pissed in a flat together, and this album has some wonderful skits that go alongside it. This track reminds me so much of the opening track to original Pirate Material by The Streets. You know, firing back to I think that lines like, I'm not dizzy, I'm just a boy in the corner. I don't think you can talk about Slowthai without talking about people like Dizzy Rascal or Mike Skinner. There was a time then, you know, both 2003, or was it 2002 for The Streets? Regardless, these guys clearly influenced this. And this opening track is just a wonderful opener for it. I love the way it ends as well, by calling Queen Elizabeth a c***. The second track is up there as one of my favourite tracks of the year, and that's Doorman, featuring Muramasa. Obviously Muramasa producing this, going on a very different tangent for them thematically. And this track in particular sounds like an old Iggy Pop record. It sounds really Iggy and the Stooges, actually, whilst also being, I don't know how you even describe this. It doesn't sound like anything. But I remember hearing it for the first time and just being incredibly excited. He went on to go perform this live at Mercury's, calling Boris Johnson a fuck, and wearing a t-shirt that said Boris. Oh no, was it a t-shirt that said f*** Boris? I know he had a head and he was shouting f*** Boris, and Lauren Laverne had to apologise and say it wasn't the views of the BBC. Although, if you read the BBC over the last few months, I think they would probably agree. You know, this absolutely is not just one of my favourite on this album, but it's absolutely one of my favourite records of the year. Doorman is absolutely incredible. Except I think it might have come out in 2018. November 2018. So it doesn't, that's why it's not on my 2019 playlist, because it actually came out in 2018. But I love it as a record. It's so much attitude. And I love the new song he's done with Muramasa as well. It's just a wonderful follow-up. The next record is Dead Leaves, which has this kind of eerie, it sounds like the intro to a new metal record. And this one, I think, harbours way back to more to a Dizzy Rascal kind of influence as well, especially the way that his flow is kind of early Dizzy, and the way that he does this, it's not necessarily like anything else. But it also has those kind of, is it pizzicato violins? I'm probably saying the wrong thing here. Like plucked. It's very grime. In that kind of old 2005 grime kind of sound. I think it's great. Yeah, I think by this point, if you're 3 tracks in, you know exactly where this album's going, and you're just hoping it doesn't stop. Track 4 is the record Gorgeous, which is probably like his closest, in terms of a direction, it's his closest to like a love song. Maybe it's the soppiest song. I don't know. It's not slow or anything. It's got this really digital sounding piano, but then it lays this wonderful beat over the top of it. It's very thick and warm, and it's just so good. I think if in terms of the stuff that came out prior to the album, you had records like Girls. Is it Girls? Ladies. And that's kind of, there's so many records out about like bitches and, you know, a derogatory approach to women, and I feel like Slowthai doesn't subscribe to that in a way that a lot of other rappers do, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a little bit, it's a bit more interesting, I think. Someone will call me a cuck for that, I feel sure. And at the end of the record, it has this wonderful story that he's told. It's him telling a story to his mate, a personal story about his dad taking him to go see Liverpool, and they're on the train to Liverpool, and they realise that actually the football match is going to be at Millwall, and it's all about the fact that he lied. He never bought tickets in the first place. He was just going to go get another one from a tout, end up missing the whole game, and it's just a wonderful end to the record, and the kind of beat fades away. It's just got a little bit of music in the background to kind of tell the story. But by the end of the record, it fades in a little bit, and you realise that it's all part of the same track, and it's wonderful. The next record is Crack. I love you like a crackhead loves crack. I think probably alludes back to the 50 Cent lyric, I love you like a fat kid loves cake. But I love you like a crackhead loves crack is a little bit more obvious, but this is exactly Slowthai's style. It's direct and obvious and challenging, and the beat itself on this record is wonderful. The about selection here says, on Crack, Slowthai compares his love for his significant other to the way an addict loves drugs. Although the theme of the track is mainly focused on love, Ty is undecided between drugs and his lover. As a result, this leads to a breakup and becoming increasingly toxic against each other. And it talks about the lo-fi beat, and I think it's wonderful. Just the way the album flows with this, I think it's absolutely great. The next record features JK on the record Grow Up. One of the great things is about Slowthai is that he isn't from London. You know, grime is so London centric, and I think that's changed in the last couple of years with people like H and with Lady Lusher. He's from Northampton, which is not London at all, and JK also, coming from Birmingham, doesn't subscribe to that kind of London thing as well. What's the one he says that I really like, JK? Oh, racing small heath like Tommy Shelby, but he says Shelby like a Brummie. Yeah, I like it. It's funny. I think if by this point, if you're not a fan of like the whole of kind of UK grime or any UK rap, then this album is just not going to be one that you're going to enjoy. But I just think it does a wonderful job of balancing different kind of guests, and thematically it's just so much more intelligent than a lot of the other stuff that's out there. It has a kind of scary undernote to it. It sounds dark. I love it. The next track is Glorious, featuring Skepta, and I think it was the first album track that I heard. For me, like, it doesn't get much bigger than Skepta. So for me, this is him signing off and saying, yeah, Slowthai's fine, therefore everyone else can enjoy it. But what I love about it is that he's talking about, this isn't about gang music. This isn't about starting fights with crews. This is about him saying, like, I'm literally the best. And I think, like, if you're looking at who's a great MC, having Slowthai and Skepta on the same record talking about how good they are is one of those classic. This is what grime was always about. It was never about like starting fights with gangs or anything like the whole kind of drill scene has made it become. You know, hip hop has this very traditional kind of direction, which is all about me and my DJ better than you, and this is one of those records that kind of follows that. But I really enjoy the way that they bounce around with the different flows and styles. This sounds very, very Skepta, but also it's so Slowthai as well. I think they've done a wonderful job of merging the two. Next is the record Toaster, which harbours back to so much of Mike Skinner in the Streets again. I feel like you're just going to start hearing the weak become heroes. It's that kind of sound that I think that they've nailed with this. This record being about him and getting in trouble with the law as a kid, growing up in Northampton, has that wonderful two-step beat to it that I think it's just great. In terms of the way the album flows, I think it fits in absolutely spot on, but without sounding boring. And so many of these albums don't hit that. Crumpets in my toaster, bum parked to my sofa, at one with nature, pissing off my neighbours. I don't know what that's about. I just picture someone getting high and sitting on their sofa and pissing off their neighbours. I could be wrong. I mean, it just has that kind of feel to it. I think that's what they've always done so well with the rest of this album. It celebrates all the different UK sounds whilst also being new. Doesn't get boring at all, and this goes from being like a dark track that's kind of aggressive to something that's kind of more emotive. I think that's what this album does so well at doing. Next is the record Peace of Mind, which was, I think, the first single that came out before any of them. This sounds like a nightmare to me. Like, it's like the way that the video came out and the way that it's all described in terms of its sound. This does a wonderful job of explaining where the rest of the album's going to go, and just sounds like a nightmare. And while the last track was kind of a more emotive track about being in trouble with the police and kind of growing up in Northampton, this one takes a much darker direction. It talks about growing up in poverty and what he was like his time before his success in the music industry. It says here on Genius, the track tells the story of Slowthai's life before his career in the music industry. He grew up in poverty, so would constantly have daily struggles, such as use of drugs, family issues, keeping clean and warm, and eating well. Despite all these dilemmas, he always felt peaceful, sleeping in his bed. But just comes at such a darker approach. Sounds cold and desperate, and I love it. I just love it. I think it's a wicked track. Our second to last track on this album here is called Missing, and this has this real kind of hypnotic, psychedelic sound to it, which by this point is having a nice kind of epic sign-off. I think this album talks about the kind of the political struggles of the country that we're living in, and what it's like to actually grow up in poverty. And I think this is just Slowthai getting the last little bit out about how sick of it he all is. Perhaps I'm interpreting it wrong, I don't know, but it's so epic. And the last track is Northampton's Child, which is an autobiographical account on Slowthai's life. And just like, I can just picture like the way this track does such an Right, well, I've run out of juice on my camera, I've got no space. This last track I just think does an amazing job of talking about Slowthai and the autobiographical account of his life. I think he's always done an amazing job of painting a picture that you can understand. He talks about things that I remember about as a kid. I'm not necessarily sure it's meant to make you feel kind of warm and nostalgic, but it tells a real story, and I think that's what he does best on this album. And yeah, I don't know what else I have more to say about this album. I think it's absolutely brilliant. It should have won the Mercury in my opinion. I think it's an absolute travesty that it didn't, and I'm really excited to see where he goes on from here. Recently he's just done another track with he did that track with the SLP. He's done another track with Muramasa, recently released a record with Denzel Curry, which I think their styles complement each other in ways that I didn't think about before. But the man is huge now. Slowthai's incredible. I was chatting to some old guy in Australia about him. Like, he's reaching people that I don't think have ever been reached before. I was just so excited. But as always, I'd love to know what you have to think. Is this an album you've listened to? Is it an album you're a fan of? Did you get to see him this year at any of the festivals? Unfortunately, I ended up missing him at Reading, and it was the biggest mistake of the year. I always have one mistake. That was my one mistake. Slowthai, Nothing Great About Britain. Absolutely one of the albums of the year. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I will see you tomorrow. Cheers. Bye.